Picture this. It's April 2023. The Tortured Poets Department album is vastly approaching, and with it comes one resounding theme. Swifties are finally going to have the Joe Alwyn album, and after a 6-year relationship that took place in relative seclusion, we all wanted to know one thing. What happened? What was the truth? But as the minutes passed until midnight, April 19th, and every Swiftie in the world hit play, we were greeted by not insight on what we thought to be her greatest love, but instead, a tattooed golden retriever. Hi, my name's Nina. I'm just a Swiftie with an English degree, and today I am coming to you with a video about the smallest man who ever lived, which was inspired by me disagreeing very heavily with a video that I saw on TikTok. I just wanted to come and clear the air about the smallest man who ever lived because I was not under the impression that this was a song that we were really questioning. I have a lot of thoughts on it, so we can definitely talk about it. Video that I ran upon that kind of upset me was implying very heavily that Matty Healy was used as a red herring throughout the entire Tortured Poets Department album, and also that when you receive new information, we shouldn't go back and apply that to the lyrics and information that we have from past albums, although I'm not really sure why. I obviously disagree with that. I think that the context that we've received from the Tortured Poets Department cannot be ignored. I think that we have to apply it to past albums. That's how I feel. So when I read The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, I am not looking through it as a viewpoint that is limited to Joe. To say otherwise is kind of dismissing the pain that Taylor was feeling at the time, and I think that it's important that we recognize that as well. So let's talk about it. Also, this person, by so easily just casting Matty aside, I don't think they understand the length of time of what has actually happened here, and I think that they are missing context clues in other songs that tell us actually like this was not just a 2-month situationship thing, like this lasted a decade. So I think that all of this is important. We're going to talk about it. Let's get into the song because there is a lot here that was missing. So I have to rectify it because I can't sleep. Okay, I have to get this out there.
Any of it true?
Was any of it true? Gazing at me, starry-eyed. That is how the song starts, and immediately I have to pause it because we have the mention of starry eyes. This is a metaphor that Taylor uses often. I do not think that it is necessarily specific to one person, because we see the starry eyes reflected in Call It What You Want It. I think that she is essentially using the starry eyes metaphor to reflect on a time period where you are feeling love with somebody else, like you see essentially love in their eyes. I think that that is what, like, the gazing at me starry-eyed. We also see it mentioned in Loss of My Life, where she essentially says that I thought I was better safe than starry-eyed. We see that mentioned at the same time. So I think that this is kind of a way that she is showing, like, feeling this connection, like this love between two people. It's like this starry-eyed connection. I think that that is kind of what the metaphor is used here for. Of course, we have cosmic references for Matty and Down Bad, so of course I'm not going to say that the stars couldn't reflect Matty as well, but I think that the starry-eyed specific metaphor that she uses, I think that it's more just indicative of like feeling love, because she uses it also for herself, saying that she's starry-eyed, that they're starry-eyed, that they have eyes full of stars. I think that it's just like kind of this loving, like starry-eyed, like you don't even see things clearly because you're starry-eyed when you are feeling that love connection, and I think that that's kind of what the metaphor is. And you're Jehovah's Witness suit. Who the fuck was that guy? And this is one of my favorite lines in the song just because I felt like it came out of nowhere. I love the imagery with Jehovah's Witness suit. I know that, people immediately when this came out were putting this picture up as an example of a Jehovah's Witness suit. I always felt like it was interesting that she used the Jehovah's Witness imagery with that. I wasn't sure if maybe it was about people having specific promises to her that they couldn't keep, because I know Jehovah's Witness, I've been very interested in theology my entire life, and Jehovah's Witness specifically believe that only 144,000 people are going to make it to heaven. And also something very interesting with her mentioning the Jehovah's Witness suit specifically that I always felt was very interesting is Jehovah's Witnesses for the longest time, like the last century, believed that 6,000 years since man's creation was going to end in 1975, and thus the world and the apocalypse potentially was going to begin in 1975. There are articles that you can read about it. This is a peer-reviewed one from JSTOR if you are interested, but I just felt felt like that was very interesting that she is essentially putting in your Jehovah's Witness suit, who the fuck was that guy, when Jehovah's Witnesses believe that very few people are ever going to make it to heaven, and also believe that the world was ending in 1975. And in a way, her world also ended with the 1975, at least from the viewpoint of this song, right? You tried to buy some pills from a friend of friends of mine. Please tell me what evidence we have that Joe Alwyn was ever involved in drug use, specifically pills. And I'm not trying to say at all that Matty Healy is no longer, sober from his rehab in 2017. I'm not trying to say that at all. He actually recently just went up on stage and said that he, I think, was 5 years sober from his heroin use, which is absolutely fantastic. But he has the drug use history, so when she is using that, I would be more inclined to think that it was him at some stage in time, at some point in time, more so than I would Joe, where we really don't have any reference to Joe and drug use at all, other than the moon was high like your friends were the night when we first met, which doesn't even say that it's him, So I just feel like that's kind of a stretch. And I don't understand how that is kind of like glossed over. And of course, we don't know everything. I have no idea in Taylor's head who the song is about. I am just using context clues. I am reading literary tea leaves, and lyrical tea leaves is what I am reading to try to use context clues to decipher it, to decode it. That is all that we're doing. But it seems like more of a stretch to be saying that this specifically is implying Joe than it is Matty. I had to buy some pills from a friend of friends of mine. They just ghosted you. Now you know what it feels like. And I think that this is very interesting with the timeline that we have talked about previously, because when I hear her say, they just ghosted you, now you know what it feels like, I am remembering what we talked about with my last lyric video, where she was on stage, I believe it was May 20th, saying that she was the happiest that she had ever been in her entire life. And on June 6th, it was announced that they were over. That is a very short period of time from going from you think that your life is the happiest that it's ever been and everything finally makes sense to we are no longer together. I, of course, do not know what happened within that time frame, but to me, I feel like she was on top of the world. She was so incredibly happy.
I've just never been this happy in my life, in all aspects of my life, ever.
I believe that she was on top of the moon, that she was so incredibly happy when she said that, and I think that he was not there. I think that she was the happiest that she's ever been, and then he ghosted her. I think that he did not come back, and maybe he did not think that it was as serious as she did. I know that he is now coming out saying that it was never serious. I know in People, they also said that it was never serious, but from the Tortured Poets Department, it says that she felt otherwise. So I take from that what I can, and I apply it to what we're looking at. And I don't even want you back. I just want to know if rusting my sparkling summer was the goal.
If rusting my sparkling summer was the goal.
And in the TikTok video that I watched, the person said, so there was something specific that we do not know that happened in the summer. And I just want to say, in May of 2023, the Eras Tour had essentially just begun. It was the sparkling summer to start off the Eras Tour, which had officially begun, I believe, in March of that year. My show was in April. I was one of the first shows that she did. We were excited, and it was a sparkling summer. That is the sparkling summer that was rusted. It was the rusted summer from the Eras Tour, where she ended up being heartbroken instead of just enjoying her incredible tour that was the light of our lives. I mean, to be honest, like, she did not get to enjoy the Eras Tour because she was heartbroken. There are videos of her leaving in a car where she is bawling her eyes out, and I'm not going to share that here because I don't want to share it. And she was heartbroken, and for us to try to pretend like the blip on the radar that Matty Healy was just this nothing burger is just insane to me. And I think that we are missing all of the context clues from the Tortured Poets Department when we try to do that. And I understand a lot of people do not want the interlude with Matty Healy to be a thing. I understand that. Speak Up Now happened. There was a petition. I get it. But we can't just ignore it. We can't just ignore all of the context clues that are giving to us from the Tortured Poets Department. We can't ignore the lyrical tea leaves. We can't just say, oh no, we can't apply things to old albums because that doesn't make sense when it does. Like, when we get new information, we should apply it to what we already know. That's just kind of how it works. And that's kind of where I'm at with all of this. When I am looking at the lyrical tea leaves and analyzing everything, of course we have to be asking these questions. And I don't miss what we had, but could someone give a message to the smallest man who ever lived. And I just want to say, The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived is one of my absolute favorite songs from the Tortured Poets Department. And I think that the use of smallest is intentional. I have been reading interviews with Matty Healy, and we actually even have it in the award show clip that I used in The Cowboy Like Me, where he refers to himself as small.
And I feel really small.
In my headcanon, I believe that he used feeling small as a descriptor to why his life with her would not work, that he felt too small within that world. And he has used, imagery of he has used other examples of this, saying that being with her was like being with Obama. He has said things like that. So I think that this was an intentional use by her. I also just want to say the 1975 fans also kind of have like a thing with guessing Matty's height, because I think that he is a little bit shorter than his other bandmates. So I think that there is quite a discourse online guessing what his actual height is. There are people who swear up and down that he's no taller than 5'5". There are people who say that he's 6 feet. There are people who say that he's 5'10". There are lots of questions about how tall he is in the community, but not a lot of actual answers on how exactly tall he is. So that was also very interesting for me to read about when I was looking into this song, because not only is small a term and word that I have heard him use to reflect how he himself feels, like feeling small, but the height thing with his fans also I thought was very interesting for The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived. So I just, take from that what you will. I strongly believe that the use of the word small here for the smallest man was intentional. But once again, I know nothing. I am reading lyrical tea leaves here. I am essentially a good guesser. You hung me on your wall, stabbed me with your push pins. And I just want to say, I have been doing like a lot of research with my Matty Healy Taylor Swift deep dive. There are multiple instances where when they were not in contact, or at least weren't publicly in contact, where he is essentially talking to her through the media. Like there's this very odd moment pre-folklore where he actually is stating that he wants to be her producer for her little acoustic album that she is going to do, that I guess would later become folklore. I have no idea whether he had any insight to folklore at that time or not. We don't really know. But I just think it's very interesting that he is like going out of his way to like mention her, right? Like, you hung me on your wall, you stabbed me with your push pins. I think that could be like one of the things that she is referring to, where like he was continually talking about her while they were not in contact. It's interesting, right? In public, showed me off, then sank in stoned oblivion. And I just want to point out what happened January 23rd of 2023, I believe it was, when Taylor Swift was invited to come on stage for the 1975 show, and she sang The City live, and she sang Anti-Hero for the first time after it had just been released on Midnights.
I was thinking of doing one that I'd never played live before.
This was actually something really incredibly huge that happened. In public, he showed her off. He talked about her in the interviews all the time. And sank in stoned oblivion. I know that he has admitted publicly that he still smokes marijuana, which, that would be the stoned oblivion. So I think that it is, again, apparent, at least from me reading this, that this song has Matty Healy written all over it. Much more so in my reading of it than Joe Alwyn. Because once your queen had come, you treat her like and also ran. And let me remind you that Matty, when he went and publicly said that he wasn't kissing anybody in front of Taylor Swift, the queen, like he has referred to her as the queen before. So when she is saying when your queen had come, it just makes me feel like that is a direct point to him publicly calling her a queen. I mean, hello. I have so many thoughts on how this has gotten so mixed up on TikTok. And Also Ran is just part of a horse race. It is just not a winner, essentially, right? It's just they also ran. So Taylor is now just like a number of women who have dated Matty and who it has ended badly with, right? You didn't measure up in any measure of a man. And again, this is just that same imagery of being the smallest man who ever lived, of being physically small. And I think that if she is saying you didn't measure up in any measure of a man, I think she is dissing him in a different manly way, if you know what I mean. So that is just, another jibe that she is giving towards him when we are reading the song. I think that she did all of this intentional, and I think that of all of Taylor's diss tracks, I would say this probably is the most damning in my opinion. Maybe I could could see an argument for Dear John, because Dear John is pretty out there too, and then would've, could've, should've kind of added on to that. But this one, The Smallest Man, I think maybe her ultimate diss track. We have the chorus again with I don't even want you back, I just want to know if rusting my sparkling summer was the goal, and I don't miss what we had, but could someone give a message to the smallest man who ever lived. And then we have the bridge to end all bridges, and I know that so many people have fallen in love with this bridge. I am one of them, but the bridge starts with, were you sent by someone who wanted me dead? Did you sleep with a gun underneath our bed? And remember in Cowboy Like Me, where she says, your boots beneath my bed, forever is the sweetest con? I think that this is a direct reflection back on Cowboy Like Me, where the boots beneath your bed was a good thing, but now he has hidden a gun underneath the bed. So this thing that you felt was safe and was a welcome home for you and something that she could fall into is not. It was all a lie, unfortunately, because he was the smallest man who ever lived. Were you writing a book? Were you a sleeper self-spy? In 50 years, will all this be declassified? In 50 years, will all this be declassified? A lot of like FBI, CIA documents, like they are declassified in 25 years, 50 years, 75 years. It depends on like the level of like secretism as to like what level they are declassified at, from what I have been able to gather. So I think that that's what she's referring to there. So I just think that it's very interesting that she is saying like, were you a sleeper cell spy? In 50 years, will all this be declassified? Like, were you sent? Sleeper cell spy, from my understanding, is someone who is like psyopted to do something. So I also think that that's an interesting like metaphor. Like when she was writing this, was she, I would imagine that she was in a lot of pain, and it probably brought her some comfort to think like, are you a sleeper cell spy? Like, was this something that was done to you that you didn't even control in a way? So I think that's also an interesting way to look at it as well. And I think it also helps to show like the depth of her pain with it and her inability to believe that it was actually him, you know, who did that to her, right? Like it was actually him in his Jehovah's Witness suit. Who the fuck was that guy? I'll confess why you did it, and I'll say good riddance, because it wasn't sexy once it wasn't forbidden. And can I just say once again to the people who strongly believe that this song is about Joe, please tell me what part of Taylor Swift and Joe's relationship was forbidden? You know what I mean? Like, obviously, the relationship between Taylor and Matty was seen as forbidden. A Speak Up Now petition was passed around by fans who wanted to publicly say that they disapproved of the relationship and they wanted her to get out of it. People actually went as far as to say that Taylor needed to have like a fan council member or something to like approve of her life decisions. Absolutely insane fan behavior, might I add. Like, don't do that. Never do that. But just the fact that that is something that happened, you know, it wasn't sexy once it wasn't forbidden. How in the world could that be about Joe Alwyn? How? I mean, the signs are all there. I do not see it. I do not understand, because with that lyric, it wasn't sexy once it wasn't forbidden. All I am seeing is Speak Up Now. All I am seeing is Matty sneaking into her Nashville apartment after the Nashville shows and people losing their mind because they were so upset. That is all I'm seeing. I remember I was there. I had just seen her the week before. I was in turmoil too. I would have died for your sins. Instead, I just died inside. And you deserve prison, but you won't get time. I think this is a direct continuation from Fresh Out the Slammer, where she says, what if I roll the stone away? What if I roll the stone away? They're going to crucify me anyway. So I think by her saying, I would have died for your sins, instead I just died inside, I think that's another religious reference like she did from Fresh Out the Slammer, where she was using that same metaphor, right? So in Fresh Out the Slammer, she is saying like, I will reveal this hidden thing, right? What if I roll the stone away? They're going to crucify me anyway. She knew that they would be unhappy, that she would reveal this to them. And in this, she is saying, I revealed you. I rolled the stone away, and I would have died for your sins. Instead, I just died inside. It's like she made the choice to roll the stone away and reveal this hidden thing that she had kept from us, and she knew that people would be upset, and they were. And then he just let her die inside because he didn't stick around long enough, did he? You know, she just did it, introduced him. The world went crazy, and it was just like a blip on the radar. And that is why so many people now can look at the Tortured Poets Department and have so many questions. Because if you do not know the lore and you do not know the context and you don't know about what happened in 2014, 2015, when they potentially had that moment together where they had that relationship previously, it can be lost on you. And I can see it. I can understand. And you deserve prison, but you won't get time. I know I've seen a lot of people kind of be really literal with this line. I don't think that she is really being literal about it, like saying that he literally deserves prison, because I mean, remember, she had just used that exact same metaphor of being stuck in the slammer in prison with her past relationship, right? I don't think that she's actually saying that Matty Healy deserves prison. Be saying that he doesn't have to deal with the backlash like she does, right? He doesn't. He's not going to get the same time that she would. Imagine if she was kissing a different person on stage every night, which of course she wouldn't, but like, just imagine, like, what if, that would never fly for her. But for him, it's just kind of a blip on the radar. It's just like something else that Matty did, but he's a rock star. What do you expect? I think that is kind of what she's saying here, in addition to what we saw previously with other songs where she said, did the best we could underneath the same moon in different galaxies, right? Like, because they are living different worlds. Him, even though it's a music world, even though, they are both living in the public, Matty doesn't have to deal with the same level of fame and the same extremes that she does. And also, you won't get time. I also almost wonder if this is another little nudge at him for ghosting her, right? Because she could say, you deserve prison, but you're not going to get time to even deal with it. You're not going to get time. You ghosted me because you didn't have enough time for me. I also kind of wonder, is that kind of a little thing? But, it's just, there's so many possibilities with her mind. Slide into inboxes and slip through the bars. You crashed my party and your rental car. I think this mention here of you'll slide into inboxes and slip through the bars is, of course, him reaching out to other girls and also sliding through the bars of the prison that he's escaping. But in addition, I think that she is also implying that he is going to slip through the bars, as in like slip through bars drinking. This could be a throw to the black dog, as well as I think that the black dog is likely also related to Matty. So I think that this imagery is really powerful when used here. And remember, I think that the party that she is referring to here is the Eras Tour, right? He was on stage in Nashville. He was on stage in Pennsylvania, I believe. He was on stage in multiple concerts. I know that he was definitely on stage, like, performing in Nashville. So I think that she could be referring to the Eras Tour. Like, he crashed her party and his rental car, which I have talked about this before. There is an actual rental car that he had issues with in LA. You said normal girls were boring, but you were gone by the morning. I think that this is another example of how she was potentially ghosted. You said normal girls were boring, but you were gone by the morning. And this line is just, it's such a gut punch, right? Like, you said normal girls were boring. That's why he was going for her, because she was special, but you were gone by the morning. And we have also a mention of this in something very similar, at least from how I'm reading it, in Question, which we haven't gone over yet, but I know that you guys want to, and we definitely will. But in Question, she says, did you leave her house in the middle of the night? Right? It also, like, it's a kind of a throwback to that. Like, did he do that again? Did he ghost her and just kind of like disappear? We don't know. We have no idea. I have no idea, but it's very interesting to read about and to think, because there are parallels that are paralleling once again. You kicked out the stage lights, but you are still performing. And I wonder if these stage lights in this mention here is not also a mention of like a lamp burning, right? Like, he kicked out the stage lights, but you're still performing, because he is lying. I think that in her opinion, she believes that he is lying by saying all of these things, by ghosting her. I think that he is ignoring the very real connection that she still, at this point when she wrote the song, believed that they had. And I think that when she is saying you kicked out the stage lights, but you're still performing, I think she is saying you put us in the dark, but you're still acting, because this isn't real. I think she's saying all of this denial, all of these things that you're saying, that's not real, because I knew what was real. And I think that that is what she is saying. And I also think it's kind of an interesting imagery here. He does like these kicks on stage that I guess is kind of like what the imagery is. But I have to think about Johnny Cash when he kicked out all of the stage lights at the Grand Ole Opry. So it could just be kind of like a musical, like, kind of metaphor that she is throwing in here. But I think that that's a heartbreaking line personally. And it is very sad for me. In plain sight, you hid. And I think that by her saying this, she is essentially saying, like, you were always, around here. In plain sight, you hid, but you are what you did, and he ghosted her and he left, and I'll forget you, but I'll never forgive the smallest man who ever lived. And I think that she is saying that I will forget about all that's happened here. I will forget about this hurt, but I'm never going to forgive you, because I think that she feels as if he straight up lied to her. I have no idea what the truth is. I have no idea. Of course, I am going to lean more towards Taylor's truth when I am reading this, because I have a parasocial relationship with Taylor Swift and have since I was 14 years old. So, of course, I'm going to be more on that side, but I have no idea what the truth is. But for my read of this, I believe wholeheartedly that Matty Healy is the smallest man who ever lived, at least from Taylor's viewpoint in this song. I also just wanted to say, of course, I don't know what happened. I am reading lyrical tea leaves, but when I was in the midst of this upset from watching this TikTok video and I was just frustrated, I called my mother, as I often do, and I knew that she watched my videos and I knew that she would be able to answer the correct answer to the question. So I called her and I was like, Mom, who is the smallest man who ever lived about? And The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived is my mom's favorite Taylor Swift song, so I was like, she's going to get it. And she laughed, and she said, oh, that's about your dad. And it stopped me in my tracks because, number one, my dad is not the smallest man who ever lived. My dad is the tallest man who's ever been tall. He is a wonderful guy. My parents didn't work out. I have a good relationship with him, but I just think it's funny that, her answer is correct if that is how the smallest man who ever lived makes her feel. Art is meant to be felt, and it is subjective, and at the end of the day, our own personal meanings is how you derive the meaning from the art itself. So I think that even when I am upset and when I think that I know everything and I think that I am deciphering and decoding these songs, I just want to say that my mother is also right. We take this art and these metaphors and these lyrics and we ultimately will apply it to ourselves. So if the song gives you a different meaning, if you listen to the song and you think it's about somebody specific to your life, that is what art is, and that's what is supposed to happen. My mom is right, with how she is feeling, because that is how we feel art and that is how we experience it. So whether you, like me, agree that Taylor is referring to Matty as the smallest man who ever lived, whether you believe that it's about Joe because you want to, or whether you get your own personal meaning from it, all of these iterations are right if that's how the art makes you feel. So that is just how I wanted to end it today, because I was humbled when my mother reminded me of how we are actually supposed to take art and how we were supposed to take it in and how we are supposed to experience it for ourselves. So I will be back next week with another lyric video. If you're into this kind of thing, if you're into watching Taylor Swift lyrical deep dives and deep dives on pop culture, feel free to like and subscribe. I would love to have you. We will be doing this every week for the foreseeable future. If you have any specific questions or any recommendations for me, leave them below and I will get to them as soon as I possibly can. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll see you next week. Bye.